Hello students, today's agenda is to check homework. We'll learn about angle, side angle, and angle, side, and you will be able to do 9.8. Today's students will be able to identify congruent pairs by angle, side angle, and angle, side, and to write congruency statements for triangles. So before we learned side, and we also learned side, side, but now we're going to learn about angle, side angle, and angle, side. So the order is a little bit different, and I'll show you how this is different from yesterday. So it says that if two triangles have two congruent pairs of angles and a pair of congruent sides in between the angles, very important, in between the angles, then the triangles are congruent. And in here you have two examples. You have this angle congruent to this angle, the side next to both of the, well, this angle congruent to this other angle, and the side that connects the two angles, so this side right here, that touches the two angles, congruent to the side that also touches the two angles, congruent. Okay, so that's very important, that the side is between the two angles. So right here we have ABD congruent to CBA, and also for the same reason, you can see that that angle ABD, so angle ABD is congruent to angle, so we go in the same order, angle CBD, and because of the marking, right? This marking right here. We also know that BD is congruent to BD, and the reason for which I use BD is because on this side I go from the one marking to the one with two markings, so I have to do the same thing on the other, from the one that has one marking to the one with two markings. Okay, and we also have angle ADB congruent to CDB, angle CDB, and also because of the markings. This is because of the reflexive property, meaning it's the same line. Okay, therefore, since I have one angle, one side, and one angle, we can say that triangle ADB is congruent to triangle CDB by the angle, side, angle postulate. And remember, the side has to be touching both of the congruent angles. Okay, that's very, very important. Now in here it says, are the following congruent? If so, write congruency statement. And the congruency statement basically is only this part. So for your homework, you only want to do this part here. You don't need to write all of this, but I want you to take note because later on we'll be working with those. So what information do we have in here? Well, we have this marking, meaning that angle D, or let's start with this one, angle B is congruent to angle D. It doesn't matter which one I start with. I can put D is congruent to B. It doesn't affect. We also know that BC is congruent to DC. So side BC is congruent to DC. Okay, and I'm going from the outside to the middle on both. And finally, we know that these two are vertical angles. So angle, we cannot call it angle C because both are angle C. So we're going to call it angle BCE is congruent to angle DCA. Okay, and it's because it's vertical angles. The reason for this one is the marking. So they also say given. When they give me the markings, it's like it's given information. So they put given. Now that we have these three pieces of information, one angle, one congruent angle, one congruent side, and another congruent angle to the other, then we can say, therefore, triangle BCE is congruent to triangle DCA, and the reason is by the angle, side angle postulate. Okay. So pause the video. Are the following congruent? If so, write the congruency statement. So in here, from here to here is 5 centimeters, and from here to here is 2 centimeters. Same here. So basically, all the way here, it's 7 centimeters and 7 centimeters. So that's what it says in here. Notice that the sides both add up to 7 centimeters. So what I want us to compare is these two triangles. Okay, so I have that first triangle, and I also have this other triangle. And as you can see, they're overlapping. Part of them are overlapping. So what I'm gonna do is so in here it says that these angles are congruent because they have a little marking in there. So we can say that angle D is congruent to angle E, and the information is given. We also know that side DA is congruent to side, since I started DA, I'm going to start EA. And I can say that the measurements, okay, the measurements tell me that they are congruent. And finally, we don't have anything else. And if we do, somebody mentioned in class about these vertical angles, but in reality, those don't help me because they're in the middle of each individual triangle. The angle in here doesn't affect or doesn't help me to identify anything between this triangle and this other triangle because it's kind of like touching in the tummy of one of the sides. So the other part that we have is this angle right here, that both the orange triangle and the green triangle are sharing. So I can say that angle, and notice how I'm gonna name it for the, let's do the green one first, DAC. So angle DAC is congruent to, since I started at the pointy part in here, I'm gonna start with the pointy part here for the orange now, to angle EAB. Okay, so it's the same angle. Notice that it has the same middle in here, but it's being shared by both triangles. And now we can say, therefore, triangle DAC is congruent to triangle EAB, and it's by the angle, side, angle. Okay, so angle, side, angle. Take a minute, pause the video so that you can take note of that. So finally, the last one is a theorem, not a postulate. A theorem is something that can be proven, and we're going to see more of it in integrated math 2. But for now, we're just going to barely touch it. We're doing parts of it, but we're going to go deeper into that on later. Okay, so this one is angle, angle, side. Okay, so in the previous it was angle, side, angle. What's the difference? I have two angles in here. In here I have two angles and one side. Well, in here the side was in the middle of the two angles. And so let me show you. The side was in the middle of the two angles for both triangles. Okay, the side was in the middle of the two angles. Very important to see that. In here, you're gonna have one angle, another angle, and then the side will be touching only one of the two angles. Notice how this here you know what, I'm gonna switch this one. This is gonna be one marking and this is gonna be two markings. Okay, so in here we have the congruent side touching one of the two angles only. So let me take this because it shows the two markings and so it gets confusing. Okay. Okay, so again, what did we say? For this one, it's only one of the angles touching the congruent pair of sides. Okay, so angle, angle, and then side. In here, side right next to angle, but it doesn't touch the other one. Okay, in here, side touches both angles. Okay, so let's look at this one right here. Do we have enough information? Can we say they are congruent? And if not, what else would we need to make it congruent by angle, angle, side? So in here we have one angle is congruent to, well, let's say angle P is congruent to angle N, and it's by the markings. We also know that these form vertical angles. So we say angle LMP. Notice that this is the angle, so this has to be in the middle. It's congruent to angle. I start with L. L has no marking, so I'm going to start with O because O has no marking. Then M, and finally N. Okay, no marking to the vertical angle to the one marking. LMP, no marking to the vertical angle to the one with one marking. And what else do we have in here? Well, we don't have anything. And so what we need is, for the angle, angle, side, we need one side. And it cannot be this side because that will make it angle, side, angle instead of angle, angle, side. So what we need is for this side to be congruent. So needed. We need for LM to be congruent to OM. Okay, and therefore right now it's not congruent, but what we need is for LM to be congruent to M, so that triangle LMP, so that triangle element LMP can be congruent to triangle OMN. Okay, so again, pause the video so you can take note of that. Are the following congruent? If so, write congruency pair. So now you're just going to identify if they are congruent, and if not, we're just not going to write what is needed, but we're going to say. So in here we have angle C is congruent to angle A because all 90-degree angles are congruent. We also know by the marking that this angle CBE, is congruent to angle ABD, but that's all the information that we have. So with two pieces of information, we cannot really say whether it's congruent or not. So we're just gonna say not enough information. Okay, we need one more side for angle side, or we need either on the outside or in the middle for angle side angle. Okay, so in here we cannot say whether it's congruent or not. Okay, what do we have in here? Well, these are congruent by the marking. We also know that if we have a straight line in here and we have one right angle, then automatically that has a right angle next to it. It's a supplementary angle. And this side is being shared by both triangles, so that's congruent to each other, or I mean to itself. And so we can see one angle, two angles, but one of the angles are kind of like floating, not touching the side. So we are going to say that triangle ABE is congruent to triangle CBE. Okay, A, B, E to C, B, E. Okay, and this is by angle, and then the side. And in the homework, this is all you have to do basically. You don't have to name all the parts. Okay, one more. Are the following congruent? If so, write congruency statements. So notice that these are all congruent, and this side is congruent to this side, but that's all we have. And we also know that these are vertical angles, therefore congruent to each other. And this is another pair of vertical angles and therefore congruent to each other. So let's see, do we have enough information to create a statement of congruency for triangles? So in here we only have, for this triangle, we only have two angles but no sides at all. So we can just eliminate that because we're not going to have information to match that to another. What about these two right here? We have one angle, and a side, and then we have one angle, and a side. So the side that we have congruent is touching the angle with one marking, and in here the same thing. So we can say that we have angle, side, because one of the angles is not touching the side. Okay, so every time that you have one of the angles touching the side and the other angle not touching the side, then that means that we have angle, side. So let's say we are gonna say that triangle A B C is congruent to A is touching the side, but it doesn't have any marking. Oh, and this marking is from here, so it would be E. Then it goes to B, which has the angle. So in here we're gonna put D, and then the green one C. So we're gonna write C as well, and we are gonna say that it's by the angle, side. Okay, and again, this is not congruent to any of the other two. Okay, so that's gonna be enough for you to do 9.8, but I do want to share some more information that you will never be able, if you have two congruent sides and one angle only, okay, and the angle is not in the middle of the two sides that are touching, then that means that you will not have a pair of congruent triangles. And the other one is angle. If you enlarge a picture, they continue to have the same angles. Okay, you have a dilation. The angles have the same measurement, but the sides don't, so they are not congruent. Okay, so this never works. And the reason for which side angle doesn't work is because notice how in here you have side is congruent to also this side and this side. Okay, but then the third side is not congruent. Again, they made this copy separate, so the side and this side are congruent. This side is congruent to this side, and this angle is congruent to this angle. But notice how the two triangles are not congruent. And how do they do that? Is because basically this side can be swung and it'll touch in here, and it's the same measurement, but it creates a complete different triangle. So they are not congruent even if they have that side congruent, and that angle. Okay, so side angle never works either. So double S, no. Triple A, no. Okay, the only ones that work and that we have seen up to now, it's side. So all three sides congruent. Side, angle, side. Okay, so the two sides have to be separated by the angle. Then angle, side, angle, and angle, side. Those work. Those are the ones that we have learned for 9.7 and 9.8. Okay, so have fun doing 9.8.